At the first intermission, as the Lethbridge Hurricanes take on the Medicine Hat Tigers, and a very special guest, really excited about this one, Brantt Myhres, former Lethbridge Hurricane, former NHLer, and now an author of Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction. And if you haven't read it yet, pick it up because it will take you on a journey. Brantt, first off, thanks for doing this. How have you been?
Thank you so much. I've been great. It's been, I wasn't sure what to expect once a book gets released, but it's been a month of probably the roller coaster, as you mentioned, of emotions. But it's been great.
Yeah, it's a captivating read. I'm a slow reader, and I read it in about 4 days, so that tells you something. I guess, have you been surprised by the support and the popularity of the book through the first month and a bit of it being on the shelf?
Yeah. I again, I've read one book myself, I think, as you've read in the book, and dropped out, and I finished grade 9. I did some grade 10 classes, I believe, but yeah, I didn't know what to expect. So when we hit the number one bestseller, I think, in the first week, not only I was blown away, but I think the publishing company was taken back as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great read, and I feel like it maybe not relatable to the level that you experienced and you went through in your life, but relatable on so many different levels, and you can draw that comparison of what you've gone through and what people deal with on a day-to-day basis in their own lives.
Oh, for sure. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't want my face on the cover and wearing a hockey jersey or anything like that. And nothing against those books at all. But I felt like that this was going to be a little bit tailored towards just an average everyday person, whether you have an addiction problem or not, whether you may have mom or dad issues that you're trying to work through. And I try to relate a lot of forgiveness in the book, and that sometimes that as children, we're not the best children to have either, so a lot of different messages I tried to relay.
When you got to the point of putting this together, and maybe let's ask you first, how did it come together, and how did the idea of a book about Brantt Myhres and your life come to fruition?
Well, I think when I was in my fifth and final treatment center, that first night I grabbed some paper and my computer, and I just sort of wrote about a proposal for the National Hockey League, because I'm like, well, man, oh man, like I think I'm the only guy that's been suspended for life, and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe I can write something for these guys so they don't have to go through that. And then I just felt compelled to write when I was a child, my earliest memories. And then from 5 years old, I wrote maybe when I was 7. And then I just kept writing. And all of a sudden we have what we have.
Was it therapeutic for you doing that?
Oh, yeah, it was. I didn't actually realize what I was doing until the pre-author copy showed up. And I actually got to read it by myself. And for me, it was the first time I got into a rhythm of the book, because before there was just so much editing and stopping and starting. I couldn't really get into any rhythm. And when I did, it took me on a completely different emotional path. I had to put the book down quite a few times as that process happened.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it was at times it was heavy for me, and we've never met in person. So being the subject of the book, and it's in your own words, maybe walk us through that process. What was it like to reread and
Mm.
for lack of a better expression, relive all of these things that you've gone through?
The book was hard. The audiobook for me was 10 times harder. Saying it out loud is a lot different than writing it down, especially when you have a couple producers in your ear that are listening to your every word. And they said to me, some days, Brantt, are going to be really hard for you. And some sections are going to be very difficult. And I didn't really know what they meant. But talking about my father, especially, my daughter, meeting her for the first time and that kind of stuff, it took some days were hours to get through that stuff.
Yeah, the part of the book when and you kind of transition to the success that you've had since and getting sober and going through that experience. But the part of the book where you talk about pulling the blanket away to see your daughter for the first time. And full disclosure, my grandfather was an alcoholic and went to AA, and he got sober when I was born. And for him, it was that aha moment. It was that, what do I have to live for? And this is it. Was Chloe, your
Mm,
daughter, that kind of realization for you that, hey, I need to get my, you know what, in order
mm.
here?
Yeah, for sure. I went to treatment. I believe it was a week before she was born, and I knew that I had to basically spend a lot of time there, and that meant not seeing her. I'd get pictures of Chloe, but it wasn't until the blanket moment, where I pull the blanket off of her face and I see her face after 8.5 months. That special feeling of, wow, I have something uh, to take care of, and Brantt isn't really that big anymore. And I don't ever want Chloe to see her dad loaded. And so for 13 years, she hasn't.
And I don't want to give a lot of what's in the book away because it is such a great read, and I encourage people to go out and get it. You can see it over my shoulder. Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction. You play junior, and we'll talk about your time in Lethbridge coming up in the second intermission. But you play junior, you get drafted by Tampa Bay, you make the NHL, and that's the childhood dream, and you get to live that out. And it probably didn't go the way you envisioned, and all the things that you dealt with on a day-to-day basis through that time. Getting sober and getting back to the NHL with the LA Kings, is that your greatest accomplishment in the game? Would you say now?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, scoring my first goal and playing in my first game and playing against Gretzky and all that kind of stuff was amazing. And that goes without saying. But I think the feeling I had of waking up every morning and opening the curtains in the hotel and going and opening the door to the Kings facility, never once did I put my head down, like I was proud of what I was doing. And that was the first time in my career where I could honestly say that.
You were able to draw on your experiences and help players, and you mentioned in the book Milan Lucic, who now, of course, plays for the Calgary Flames. When you helped him and subsequently, I imagine, many others, did it give you purpose? Did it give you like a, hey, I experienced this and my life was hell, but going through that, getting sober, getting educated, and being able to help gives me uh, solace in that what I went through I had to do to be able to help others eventually.
Oh yeah, it comes full circle. I think with Milan, just a situation where he needed an ear and needed some support, and I was glad that I could be there for him. And we both played the same role. He scored way more goals than I did, but for sure, looking back, everything had its purpose, and yeah, I was in a position now to give back.
Brantt Myhres is a former Lethbridge Hurricane. He is an author now with Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction. We encourage you to pick it up. We will have more with Brantt coming up in the second intermission. Looking forward to talking about your time with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Second intermission, Lethbridge Hurricanes, Medicine Hat Tigers, and a man who's familiar with that rivalry is Brantt Myhres, a former Lethbridge Hurricane NHL player. Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction, is a book that he has written, and it takes you through his journey through his entire life. And again, I really encourage you to pick it up because it's a captivating read. Medicine Hat Tigers, Lethbridge Hurricanes. Let's talk about your time with Lethbridge. You're no stranger to that rivalry.
Yeah.
Maybe first off, talk about that rivalry and what it was like to play in those games back in the early 90s.
Well, it wasn't just Medicine Hat back then. It was everybody. There was Saskatoon, and man, I remember playing against a guy named Rhett Tremblay and Mark Rader in Saskatoon. And everybody seemed to have tough teams back then, And so there wasn't really a night where you'd go into an arena and go, "Oh, I'm gonna have a night off," because the game is just so different. And I do part of me really misses the '90s era.
Let's talk about your time with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. You spent 3 seasons after starting with Portland, and maybe for those that don't know, talk about your journey to the WHL and getting on with Portland before we transition to Lethbridge.
Yeah, I was, I believe, 14, turning 15. I got listed by a gentleman named Bob Torrey. And then I went to the training camp as a 15-year-old. I went there. I couldn't make the team as a 15-year-old, so I made it as a 16-year-old. Played a year there, but wasn't really getting a lot of ice time. My father thought that, walking off the team and requesting a trade would be a good idea, and it actually was, because I got traded to Lethbridge and I met the team in Kamloops. Jamie Pusher was our captain at the time, and he drove back with me all the way from Kamloops to Lethbridge, and I'll never forget that drive. And then I was fortunate to have some really good billets when I lived in Lethbridge too, and just the team. There's a picture in there of all of us. I believe we were sitting around a hockey net or something, and everybody was smiling and laughing, and we just seemed to have so much fun back then.
Talk about your billets. Who are they, and how impactful were they on you?
Yeah, so my first billets, I can't remember what their name was. I didn't live there very long, but then I went to Linda and Al, and I'm trying to remember their last name. But Al was a big policeman, and Linda was just a sweetheart. And I write in the book too about a couple times where I wasn't the best guy to have living there. But again, that's the way that it happened.
You spent 3 seasons with the Hurricanes, 151 games, 27 goals, 94 points. What was it like being a Lethbridge Hurricane at that time? Of course, right before you got here, they went to back-to-back WHL Championship Series, losing both, of course. But I feel like at that time there was some momentum in the city and playing in front of people at the Sportsplex.
Absolutely, and I'd like to give an acknowledgement to my old teammate Rob Hartnell, who passed away. I believe, I don't know when it was. I know it was relatively soon. He was just an awesome guy to play with. So he's going to be really missed. And we had Dominic Pittis, we had Bob Lokes as our coach, we had Rob Dom. It was the fans were amazing. Everything about Lethbridge I just loved. It just had such a special place in my heart. I love the city. I went back there to see a friend on New Year's Eve, and it was the first time I was in Lethbridge in, I don't know, maybe 18 years. And it was awesome just pulling in and seeing the sign Lethbridge, 10 kilometers away. It just brought me back to when I was riding the bus.
92, 93, you get drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning that summer, and you have a career year, 13 goals, 48 points. I get the sense from a lot of people that I talk to, after they've played and retired and move on to regular life, that junior hockey was the best time in their life. That season in particular, was that the most fun you had playing the game of hockey?
It was, it was the next season, my 19-year-old year. I think I only had 8 fights all year, and I had to look for pretty much all 8 of them. I was playing on a line with Dominic Pittis and Igor Volochenov, I think his name was. It was great. First line power play. I felt like a hockey player again. And I wasn't necessarily worried about fighting every night like I was the year prior when it was around 40 fighting majors. So my 19-year-old year was probably my funnest in junior hockey.
You reference your time in Lethbridge in the book, Painkiller, a Memoir of Big League Addiction. Do you keep in touch with some of the guys you played with? In the book, you mentioned Todd McIsaac, Slade Stevenson, and Morris Meager, some of your running mates on the other side of the life, not necessarily the hockey side. But do you still keep in touch with some of the guys you played with here in Lethbridge?
Mo and Todd I talked to on Facebook. That's a good thing about Facebook or Instagram. You can reconnect with these guys. And then I'm trying to think who else. Shane Peacock I talk to once in a while on Facebook. It's funny though, when you're young like that, you think you're going to be best friends forever, and then life happens and people move on and you lose touch with each other. But very fond of all the guys that I played with.
I remember, I think it was early December when you were getting ready to release the book. You were looking for some pictures of your time in Lethbridge, and you called me, and we were talking on the phone, and you mentioned, I can't believe Bob Bartlett is still with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. He was, of course, the general manager when you played, and
Yeah.
still kicking. Just had his hip replaced, so he's got 2 brand new hips. He's ready to roll at 82. But
Wow.
what
Wow.
does Bob Bartlett mean to you when you hear that name, and of course his time with Lethbridge when you were playing?
Well, he had his hands full with me. I know that. Thank God he wasn't 82 back then. Would have had a heart attack dealing with me. But no, you know what? I know that I dealt with addiction issues and stuff, but I always looked at the general manager and the coach and the president with and the owner with a lot of respect and gratitude that I was playing hockey for a living. So Bob was an amazing man. There's a reason why he's still in hockey after all these years. You don't stick around unless you're loved.
You are the all-time leading penalty minute holder for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. 739 penalty minutes. You had that one year where you had 359.
That should have been 381, by the way.
381. Okay.
So the story on that is I was at 376 or 377, and my dad told me that if I had a fighting major, I'd break the record for the most penalty minutes ever by a 17-year-old. And so we played Medicine Hat, our last game, and I lined up against Cam Daniluk, and I said, buddy, I need the record tonight. I need one. And he goes, okay. So I had 381, and somewhere in there, they lost those minutes for some reason, but it really actually is 381.
Well, that in itself is impressive beyond anything else that you've done in your life. I get the sense you're proud of that record. Of course, like you referenced in the book, the fighting and everything that, you really lived on the edge on the ice and off the ice. But when your name's still there, 27, 28 years after you played here, does that give you something?
Yeah, I think listen, they a lot of these interviews I've done, they start the interview by the only guy that's ever been banned from the National Hockey League for life. And that's just it is what it is. I mean, did I want that title? No, but at the end of the day, what happened to me was able to be what's behind your back right now. And I see that in the penalty minute record or whatever. Yeah, that's sort of cool. One day, I don't know, maybe my daughter or my son might be able to grab it and get a good laugh out of it.
Well, I think it's safe to say, Brantt, that record will stand the test of time. That's for sure. I only a couple more with you. You've written this book. In the book, you reference getting sober and the journey that was, being able to work with the Los Angeles Kings for 3 years. What are you doing now?
Honestly, I'm getting ready to go meet a friend at lunch, and then I'm going to go down to the Harley Davidson dealership, look at a bike, and call a couple of my sober buddies later on. I don't look past today.
It's a great mentality, and you talk about that in the book as well. How can people get a hold of Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction?
You know what? Honestly, I believe at any bookstore that you like to walk into, if not online, it's on Amazon, it's on Penguin Canada, Indigo. So pretty much, I think anywhere. The audiobook is on iTunes or pretty much anywhere that you'd like to get a book.
Yeah, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I read it in 4 days, and it's worth the read. Really, really captivating book and takes you through everything that you were able to experience from afar. Brantt Myhres, man, so much thanks to you for doing this, and hopefully as we progress through the world that we're living in right now, sooner rather than later, we can get you back down here in Lethbridge and take in a game and have you experience all of that with the book here as well.
I can't wait. That's honestly one of the first places I'd like to come visit once we get opened up again.
We'll get her done. Brantt, thanks for this.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, there's Brantt Myhres, former Lethbridge Hurricane, former NHLer, author of Painkiller, a memoir of big league addiction. Pick it up at your local bookstores.